Okay, good morning. We're in the beginning of Siman Kuf Tzadi Gimel about the halachas of Zimun. Okay, so we're at the top of page Tzadi Zayin. The Mechaber said mitzvah lachzar acha asara, that if there are enough people there, you should try and get 10 people so that you can do the Zimun b'shem Hashem. Umius continues the Mechaber im hoyu rabim mesubim yachad. If you got a lot of people there together, imagine like a big wedding. And you can't hear the zimun from the mevarich because it's just there are too many people there and it's just you can't hear. And they can't divide up into groups of 10 and daven and bench with a loud voice. And the balabayas will be upset that everyone's making their own little chaburas for little groups for benching. So what do? You divide yourselves into small groups of 3, which is less noticeable, and the balabayas won't get upset with you. And you can bench gently, nicely, softly. And that's better than doing a bigger zimun, because it's a big hall, a big room, and they can't hear the person doing it. So therefore, rather than they can't divide into groups of 10 because that would upset the balabayas, and therefore they should do it in groups of 3. Now we're going to discuss, and soon we'll get to the footnote. But what happens in a wedding where it's a big hall? Nowadays we use a microphone. The person doing the zimun often would use a microphone. Is that okay? Because if it's okay, then it avoids the problem of what the Mechaber is addressing over here. So that will come to in the footnote. That's an interesting ha'ara. But let's just do the Mishnah Berurah and then we'll get there. Sif Kotan Yud Gimel we're up to. So we said mitzvah lechaza acha asara. We'll start with Yud Beis. Kadesh yu yochel nevarich b'shem, so that you can say the Shem Hashem and nevarich Elokeinu. Va'ayin b'achreinu dafilim imhem shiva. Even if there are 7 people together, mitzvah lechaza acha oid shleisha. You should try and find 3 more to join. Va'ayin b'mashe kasavnu le'el b'sif kotan zayin. Okay, Yud Gimel lishmoya birchas hazimun. But if there are a lot of people there and you can't hear the birchas hazimun, the person leading benching, because if they could hear from the mezamin, the person leading the zimun, even though they can't hear all of benching from far away, but they can at least hear the Rabbi nevarich, then they would not be allowed to go into groups of 3 like the Mechaber is suggesting over here. But they just listen to the zimun. Because in that situation you'd hear the zimun and then everyone says their own benching. And they're not able to split into groups of 10, says the Mishnah Berurah Yudalid, because if they could split into groups of 10, then they should not be dividing themselves into groups of 3, because they shouldn't lose out on the zimun b'shem. Tesvav. B'kol ram, because they'll do it in a loud voice, because they want to make themselves heard, that the group of 10 can all hear them. V'yakbid aleim, and the balabos might be upset with them. So too, if they need to run off to a dvar mitzvah, and they haven't got time to wait, because otherwise the mitzvah will go. They're allowed to divide into small groups of 3. And that's how the Magen Avraham writes. The Chaim writes that if they don't have a minyan of 10, then they should not even go off to the dvar mitzvah, because otherwise it will be mevatel the zimun of 10 with the other group. If, however, we're worried about missing a mitzvah d'oraisa, then okay, so just to summarize what we've said, that is, the Mechaber is saying that if when you've got it's ideal, it's preferable to do a zimun with 10 people, because then you can be mevarich b'shem. But if you're in a situation where the balabais is going to be makbid, there's a large crowd, and you can't hear the person speaking, and therefore really you wanted to go into a group of 10 so you can do a zimun with 10, then if that's going to upset the balabais, go into a group of 3. And in terms of leaving and not leaving, if you've got 7, we said you should try and find 3 more. And if whether or not you should leave in order to go to a mitzvah, then the Chai Adam was strict about it and said, unless it's a mitzvah deraisa, one should not leave to go do this mitzvah, because otherwise you're being mevatel the possibility of doing a zimun b'shem. Okay, says the Mechaba, says the Mishnah Berurah Zayin, birchas zimun. So this is going on. The tov, it's better to go into small groups of 3, and that way, otherwise, because if you try and listen to the person, it's a big crowd, and you're going to miss the mitzvah of zimun. Says the Mishnah Berurah, then because if you could hear the zimun, then you can't subdivide. The Achronim don't like this. That true, we said in Kufay Gimel, every single person anyway benches themselves quietly. Really, the person leading the benching, you should daven with him, and sort of keep up pace with him and answer amen to his brachas. At least the first bracha, you should listen to the mevarich and say amen to that. The ad sham hu birchas hazimun, because that really is the birchas hazimun. It's the Rabbi Sa Nevarich is the beginning, and it goes to hazon es hakol. That much you should listen from the mezamin. Kedlekam b'siman reish b'hagol, which we'll get there. V'im kein af im yechoyin lishma birchas hazimun min pi mevarich, even though you can hear the zimun from the mevarich, kol she'en yechoyin lishma mila min pi mevarich. But if you can't, because there's so many people there, you can't hear every single word. Ad hazon es hakol mutav lehaim lechalik shleisha shel levarich b'lashem. Better in that situation, if you can't hear the first bracha, then in that situation divide into groups of 3, so that that at least you're going to hear some form of zimun. Now, this is what we were talking about earlier. When you've got a very large gathering, for example, you've got a very big chasna, give benching to somebody who's got a loud voice, so everyone can hear. Now the question, of course, is, can you use a microphone? Right? The Mishnah Berurah is talking in the days before microphones, give it to someone who's got a loud voice. But if you look at number 17, in the footnotes, he addresses this issue. Or the Inyan Zimun Baramkol, can you use a microphone when you've got a large crowd? Das Hagon Rabbi Yashiv and the Hagon Rabbi Yisrael Yaakov Fisher. You should not use a microphone for benching with a big crowd, because that's not the actual voice of the mezamin. It's a technologically distorted voice, which is not his real voice. Not a lehakel b'dava, he is mekel, and says that you can use a microphone in a large gathering. The whole source for zimun is derived from the pasuk Ki Shem Hashem Ekra. When I call out the Shem of Hashem, give praise, give greatness to Hashem. When you call on others to join you in a bracha, that's all you need to do. So you're just calling their attention. And true, the microphone might not be your true voice. It's a distorted, like I said, a distorted voice through technology. Okay, but it's still called the summons to bench to give me to make a bracha. But even the Shevet HaLevi says it's better to avoid it. He's being moitzi them. So therefore, lechatchila, it's preferable to use to not use a microphone. But the one can. I think the minhag olam is in weddings to give the person a ramkol, because nowadays there's such big halls, it's just they will not be heard unless he has a super powerful voice. He then brings Rav Moshe. He says that although you're not hearing the natural voice, but you can use it for Megillah and Havdalah, etc. Even the Chazon Ish says that. When it comes to Birchas Hamazon and Kriya Shema, Rav Moshe says one should try and avoid it. It's not clear that we should matter it. For Inyan Chodesh, it's like a new thing. In these countries, in America, in Europe, then people will be, this is a slippery slope. And therefore avoid using a ramkol because it could be used for a host of things, and therefore one should avoid it. Okay, let's just, base is very short. All right, it's a bit late. We'll leave it. Mr. Shem will do it next week. Tomorrow, Mr. Shem. Okay, say that, we'll leave it there.